Okay, welcome to the latest edition of Ragic Office Hour, and let's get started with your questions. First question, can a Ragic sheet be kept up to date from an external SQL table or MS SharePoint list? Okay, we have a SQL database which Microsoft's Power Automate can periodically run or trigger on a new record being added in specific SQL table to add new item in a SharePoint list. Okay, this works fine. Unfortunately, there's no Power Automate or Microsoft connector for Ragic, so we're unable to access a Ragic sheet and add a row directly. So you're running a SQL database and new records into the SQL table and adds to the SharePoint. And you would like to also add to Ragic when you have a new row on the SQL database. Okay, we can use Zapier to connect SharePoint lists to Ragic. No direct SQL connection in Zapier, as it can't use Microsoft Internet Gateway to get to our SQL. And perform this second step in the function. But zaps trigger every 2 to 15 minutes. Max setting is 15 minutes, and consume tasks. So okay, you have a quota on your paid Zapier plan, which means heavy consumption on tasks, even within 1 day when running on cron event. So okay, so what you're saying is that SQL to SharePoint list and SharePoint list to Ragic works, but it consumes too much Zapier quota. Are there any integrations or methods to allow Ragic to connect to SQL source, which when updated, new record created, could update sheet in Ragic so that it has new content? Right now, Ragic has the SQL sync function, but it syncs from Ragic to SQL. And we are currently working on the other way so that you could create a record on Ragic when you create a new record on the SQL table, or make an update on the SQL table. That's something that we're working on now, but it's not ready yet. So yeah, so to solve this along the line, you still have to probably write API calls, write code to do API calls, and whenever a new record is created on your SQL database to create a new row on Ragic, or you're gonna use something like the SharePoint list as an intermediate to run Zapier to connect to Ragic. So yeah, without code, you'll probably need to use Zapier, and it will in any case consume your quota. And if you're able to write some code, you should be able to write code to call the Ragic API and create a record when a SQL database table creates a new record. Okay, user case example is our Business Central SQL database holds supplier and contracts. As new contracts are added and new suppliers are added, we need to refresh the data available for Ragic for time and attendance on contract sites and to reference new suppliers. That makes sense? Yeah, another way to do this would probably be you could try to do before we are going to support SQL Sync from SQL database to Ragic, but before this is supported, I think you could configure an ETL transformation to export the SQL table periodically to an CSV or Excel file. So if you're able to do that, and you put that CSV or Excel file on the like a OneDrive or a Google Drive or Dropbox, and where Ragic can download the Excel file or CSV file using HTTP, then we will be able to, configure the periodic import from URL to do a daily import from that CSV or Excel feed that you generate on a daily basis from your SQL database. So that's also the way that currently we recommend for ERP integrations to integrate their database table, the data under database tables to Ragic. Okay, we've used Power Query update each hour within Excel to get the most update SQL info. And once created and saved, we can of course manually import this in each day hour into Ragic, but looking for some automated push-pull mechanism or applet that could ensure we don't have to manually do this each day. Understood? And yeah, if you can generate that CSV or Excel feed like automatically on a daily basis, then we could do the periodic import from URL and update that to Ragic. We looked at your check the file at HTTPS site each day idea. Okay, you're mentioning this. But again, we would need to import that file to that destination, overwriting each day in order that Ragic new records gets created. You could configure it as, create a new record. It seems to be update only existing entries method. This is not true. You could create new records. So any ideas welcome. Ragic's superb, but real-time updates from other sources would be fantastic, useful to us. Okay, so this could work. This could work for you for now because it does create new records. It not only updates existing records, it can only create new records. It works basically just like import data from file, only that it retrieves a file from a URL. And the configuration is pretty much the same as import from file. Zapier and Power Automate can achieve the task in sort of fashion, but Zapier's task consumption makes it impossible to even run for a few days on timer. Okay, the trigger when a record is created on SQL tables should ensure that it doesn't fire unless a new record is added. But this doesn't seem to work with Zapier. It pulls data anyway and consumes a task. Yes, that's true. The way Zapier works, it needs to check it periodically. It must consume the task for it to know if there's any change. Is there any possibility that a Ragic connector for Power Platform, Power Automate, or Power BI will be available as it is for Zapier? For Power BI can use Ragic CSV feed or Excel feed as a data source. So, quite a few of our customers are using Ragic as a data source for their Power BI. So that works, but I'm not sure about Power Automate. We could kind of I'll get our team to kind of research into how Power Automate would be supported by Ragic, how we can support uses for Power Automate. Okay, to sum up, right now the SQL sync function on Ragic only supports syncing from Ragic to SQL database tables. We are working on the other direction of sync, where you can sync a SQL database table to Ragic sheet. So that's something we are working on right now. And secondly, import periodic import from URL does support the creation of new records. It essentially supports all of the configurations that's supported in the import from file, Excel or CSV. If you are able to use TL functions on MS SQL or other databases to periodically generate a CSV or export, you should be able to use periodic import to sync your data to Ragic. Okay, next would be the Power Automate. Ragic can support the integration with Power BI with Ragic as sheets as data source for Power BI. For Power Automate, I will have arcane integration support. Okay, thank you for your detailed question. Okay, next question. What is the best way to retrieve individual dates from a date range? Hi, is it possible in Ragic to retrieve individual dates from a date range? Start and end date. A holiday request was entered with a start day of January 10th and end day of March 10th. This is through October 1st and October 3rd. This is 3 working days. Okay, this is DDMNYYYY. Okay, so payroll runs weekly from Friday through Thursday. Only 2 of these days will be paid, with the October 3rd outstanding to be paid the following week. Okay, I want to get a list of dates within this start-end date range to allocate payment status to these individual dates. So October 1st paid, October 2nd paid, October 3rd unpaid. So not only you would like to retrieve the individual dates in the date range, and you also want to check for working days. Okay, in Excel you could use the sequence function to formula to list the date ranges. Okay, I don't think to list the dates within the range. Is there a similar function in Ragic? Yeah, I don't think we support sequence yet. I'm not really familiar with Excel sequence. Oops. Documentation. Okay. Okay. I think, yeah, I think this is something we could probably support in the future. But when you retrieve a sequence, it's kind of like an array of dates, right? Like array of dates or numbers. So I'm thinking, how would this be represented on Ragic? Because we could write it as a formula, so you could generate all the dates in one field as one field value, but that's kind of not very convenient because if you want to do anything with these dates, it's not going to be that easy to work with. It's like the value. You would still need to parse the field value in to get all those dates. So it's possible that we could support sequence for these states in the date range, but we'll probably need to figure something out um, to process these kind of date ranges. Probably with probably we could probably try the tools and mass create. Yeah, because we could create a record for every day from a certain day range. Yeah, the most similar thing I think you could do is kind of you could create the data for this date range. And yeah, this will work better than the formula, the sequence formula on Ragic, because the sequence formula would probably return the value as a string and you still need to parse it. So it's a lot, I think it would be a lot better to just create a record for each day for, you know, during during a time period. Yeah, this is the closest we have from your requirement. Okay, so that's it should help you with this. Okay, the mass create. Should try using our mass create function to generate individual records for a date range. Mass create. So like for October 1st to October 3rd, that's 3 records. And if you want those records to be in a subtable, you could just create a new sheet from subtable and generate those from the new sheet generated from the new sheet generated from the subtable. But but we're not able to process like working days for that for now. Can sequence function do that? Yeah, from first look at the documentation, Excel sequence function doesn't do that too. But to determine if it's a working day, you will probably need to add some custom Yeah, I think Ragic has formulas for working days. Oops. Can look at design guide. Yeah, workday. Workdays. This is the number. Yeah, but you can use this to check if a date is a working day. To determine if a date is a working day. Okay, I hope this helps. It might not be completely exactly match your requirement, but I think it should be a good start. And yeah, let me know how it works out. But I think supporting sequence might not be the answer here. Yeah. Okay, next question. Approval flow and data. Hi, I have set up an approval flow with 3 steps. Step 1, Sgate 1 to be approved by X. Step 2, Sgate 2 to be approved by Y. Step 3, Sgate 3 to be approved by Z. Can on the form I show the status of each step, approver name, and status of approval? For example, in form page, can I have a field Sgate 1 approval status, next field is step 1 approver name, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'm assuming you're using the approval function on Ragic. So is that under basic? Okay. So you're using the approval flow configuration. So this kind of approval. And you would like to retrieve the value in those approval. I think we have some approval related formulas. So you could use approval formulas to know, how many steps there are and who submitted it, and submit date, finish date, and you can get the information from a certain step. And this is the current step. And you will be able to get the name of the step and the status of the step and the users of the step. So yeah, you could use the approval formulas to get this information. If you are using Ragic's approval flow function, you can add approval formulas to retrieve approval status and approval step information, including the approver name and status, and so on. Okay, yeah, so it should be fairly straightforward to you can refer to the formulas here to retrieve it. I'll just add the explanation here. Okay. Thank you for your question. All right, and that's it for the questions for today. And thank you for joining in to the today's Ragic Office Hour. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to use the Office Hour question sheet, and I'll be answering your question in 2 weeks. All right, thank you and goodbye.